Now is our time in the spotlight dwindling. To talk Russia and China, we are joined by two very special guests. Former CIA intelligence officer, strategic intelligence analyst with the Lindsay Group, and author of Putin's Playbook, Russia's Secret Plan to Defeat America, Rebekah Koffler. And we also have author to The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War, Gordon Chang. Good evening to you both and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Alex.
All right, Rebekah, let's start with you. Now, what's the concern with Russia on the Ukraine border? What does Ukraine have that Russia wants?
Oh, it's a lot. Actually, Putin has never accepted the loss of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union. So he wants right now to basically rebuild Russia's strategic buffer, of which he believes Ukraine and other former Soviet states such as Georgia, Belarus, etc., are part of. And so he has high risk tolerance to reverse the outcome of the Cold War. Of course, the United States stands in its way, but unfortunately for us, Putin does not respect President Biden, and he's willing to strike Ukraine despite all the warnings that the White House has made to Russia.
All right, Rebekah, we'll get back to that point in just a minute. But first, Gordon, I want to talk about another border, China playing border games with Taiwan. What are they trying to gain by beefing up their military in the South China Sea?
First of all, China wants to control all of its peripheral waters. So South China Sea, East China Sea, Yellow Sea. But it also wants to absorb Taiwan because it believes that Taiwan is its 34th province. It wants large parts of India. It wants Japanese islands. So really what we have is a China that is trying to break apart its neighbors. And it's very much like what Rebekah talked about in terms of Putin. Putin wants Eastern Europe. He wants all those former Soviet republics back. Well, Xi Jinping wants his periphery back, at least the way he puts it. And eventually he wants to rule the world. Xi Jinping has been talking about ruling the world.
Now, I want to get both your opinions on this right here. Now, I do want to bring this in. On Face the Nation, Vice President Kamala Harris said this was the biggest national security threat to the United States. Take a listen.
What do you see as the biggest national security challenge confronting the U.S.? What is the thing that worries you and keeps you up at night?
Frankly, one of them is our democracy.
So our democracy is the biggest national security threat. Rebekah, when she says something like that, what is that signaling to the leaders abroad?
Well, first of all, she is very similar in her view with Putin and Xi Jinping because they also perceive democracy as a threat. Amazing. Well, but the signal to the authoritarians of the world, such as Putin, Xi Jinping, the Ayatollahs, is that basically the United States is abandoning the democratic principles, such as freedom of speech, such as religious freedom, and so on and so forth. And basically, they want something that would look more like the Soviet Union, where I grew up, where we were not allowed to say what we think, we were not allowed to do what needed to be done. And so in that sense, this is really giving me flashbacks, and I'm terrified.
Well, Gordon, your thoughts on Kamala's comments?
This is really just feeding into what Beijing says. Beijing says that the U.S. democracy is incapable, incompetent, is failing. And when they hear these words from the vice president, that certainly makes them happy because they recycle them through propaganda. And that is not an isolated comment, because one of the first things that President Biden did when he took office, matter of fact, on January 20, he started issuing executive orders that could have been written by Beijing that talked about xenophobia in the United States. So really what they've been doing is helping not only Xi Jinping, but also Vladimir Putin, as Rebekah has been saying, in recycling their narratives against the U.S. and against the world's democracies.
Well, Gordon, sticking with you, could we see a Russia-China alliance, and are there signs that in China that an alliance is already in effect?
Well, we know that Russia and China coordinate their foreign policies. Since 2005, they've been exercising their militaries regularly. This August, for the first time, Russian soldiers were using Chinese weapons in an exercise that demonstrates interoperability. And of course, Russia says that China and Russia are actually closer than allies, which is hard to believe. But the point is, that's the rhetoric. And we're hearing many of the same things from China as well. So clearly they are forming, if not a formal alliance, they are forming effectively a coalition that opposes the United States and our friends and allies around the world.
Rebekah, your thoughts?
For the most part, I agree with Gordon, but I'd like to give a little bit of a nuance here. Russia perceives China as its security threat number 2. So while it is a marriage of convenience with China from Russia's standpoint, they certainly would like to challenge the United States and cooperate just to the point where they can present a security threat to America. But this strategic alliance is only, for the show. It's not, and ultimately, it's not a true alliance. It's sort of an alliance. The Russians have a saying, whom are we going to be, against whom we're going to be friends? And against who is the United States.
Well, Rebekah, you brought up President Biden earlier, and I told you we would get back to it. Is there anything that he can do to place a wedge between Russia and China's budding relationship?
I get asked this question a lot. And unfortunately, the answer is not much. The reason is because we were sleeping at the wheel. While Russia and China have been modernizing their weaponry, developing hypersonic weapons, C4ISR, command and control, and all of those things, we were busy focusing on counterterrorism operations. There were indications and warning for more than 10 years what Russia and China were doing, and Pentagon only now is switching its strategy to countering the threat or countering a nation-state threat such as Russia and China. And that's just way too late. We also have not responded to Russian cyber attacks for 20 years. So we've been teaching Putin that we're not going to do anything. And at this point, it's too late, and Biden should not be having phone calls with him.
Well, Gordon, I think a natural follow-up question or a concern could be one of these questions, one of these countries starting a war? Could that be a possibility? And are we even prepared for a third world war?
Well, certainly one of these countries could start a war. I mean, it's not just Ukraine, and it's not just Taiwan. It could be India, Japan, the Philippines, and it could be their proxies. The point is that once one of these bad actors moves against their victim, the others, either in direct coordination or just taking advantage of the situation, could move against theirs, which means we can see simultaneous conflicts across the Eurasian landmass and possibly through the rim of North Africa. So yes, although these countries do cooperate, they don't necessarily have to. They just have to see one move, and then they will all move, because none of them really respects the United States right now. And I don't care if Russia and China don't like each other. The point is they're working together, and that means they are dangerous at this moment. If they don't form an enduring partnership, it may not matter, because what matters, Rebekah, is the here and now.
Rebekah, do you agree with Gordon on the sentence?
100%. 100%. He nailed it. Yes, the threat of China, Russia, and possibly even Iran synchronizing simultaneous operations that would present a challenge, a huge challenge to the United States, because we have just withdrawn from Afghanistan after 20 years because we couldn't possibly have achieved victory over the Taliban. So how in the world are we going to be able to fight 3 nation states whose weaponry by far, taken together, is going to really, really present a threat to the United States? Even though we have the best warfighting force in military history, once those 3 cooperate, it's going to be a challenge.
Well, Rebekah Koffler and Gordon Chang, this has been a tremendous discussion with you two. Thank you for so much of this information, and Happy New Year to you both.
Happy New Year, guys.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.